All right. I am happy to be joined by Kyle Bandujo, host of From Phenom to Farm with Baseball America, as well as Big Screen Sports, part of the Blue Wire Network. Kyle, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome, man. Thank you so much for having me. I
Of
love
course.
doing any podcast where I don't have to edit it. So I'm very, very excited.
Yes, I was actually on a podcast last night, and I was telling my wife now with baseball and the Brewers, the postseason coming. I've been on a couple of different podcasts talking about the Brewers, and it's nice just to jump on, talk, and get off, and like no stress, no worries, just put in the back of my head, and
Oh, it's great. It's great.
it's
Great
it's
feeling.
very it's I know exactly how you feel. Before we start, tell me a little bit about your background, how you got into baseball, your appreciation for the sport, and how that kind of led into your work for Baseball America, as well as your podcast with Blue Wire.
So that love for baseball goes back as early. I mean, as early as I can remember. I was always pretty taken by it as a kid. Like would throw a plastic ball to myself in the backyard. That whole thing was it was always my sport. Like I guess I grew up right as the era of specialization was starting to come up, but I didn't want to do anything else except play baseball, which was good because I'm 5'7", not very fast. I didn't really, weren't a lot of other sports breaking down the doors for me. Weren't a lot of coaches at my door being like, "Hey, man, come play for my team." So, I took to baseball. My dad was a big Minnesota Twins fan. He grew up in Virginia, where there are no professional sports teams. My grandparents are Cuban immigrants. The Twins' best player when my dad was growing up was Tony Oliva. So my dad took to the Twins. I inherited that. I watched the 91 and 87 World Series VHSs on all the time as a kid, and assume that like, yeah, I'll get to watch the Twins play in a World Series one day. 30 now, hasn't happened. But yeah, so always a big baseball fan, playing, and I grew up in Texas, or I moved to Texas when I was 11. So you can play pretty much every month except December.
Right.
So baseball is basically a year-round sport here. And so I did that. Came time for college, and it was either go to a big school with football and all that stuff, or go to my dream school is Virginia Tech, or continue to play baseball, find a place that would let me walk on. And I picked that. I went to the University of Texas, the Permian Basin, which is in Odessa, which is known for Friday Night Lights, the movie, the book,
Yeah.
that the movie was based on. So I
Mm-hmm.
went there, played D2 baseball for 5 years, and then yeah, I knew I'd be done after college. I wasn't one of those guys who was like, if I can just get seen, like I'll get
Yeah.
some pro ball time. Like that wouldn't me. I
You just need
struggled
one
enough.
scout to see you.
Oh yeah, no, I needed, man, when the scouts came to see me, it was ugly. Now I finally got to pitch a little bit as a senior, which was cool, but then um got out into the working world, I guess. Started a 9 to 5. Was figuring that out, and then I started freelancing, just writing like post grad humor for a website that is no longer in existence, but did that for a couple of years. That site cratered, and then was just trying to find stuff to fill that creative outlet, fill that time. And I started Big Screen Sports, which is a sports movie podcast. It was something that when I was writing for the post grad site, I had originally thought of like doing a written series on the sports action and sports movies and like what was realistic and what wasn't. And then I just kind of turned that into a podcast, and it's just generally turned into a an appreciation of movies. And then with from Phenom to the Farm, I had Baseball America's JJ Cooper on my podcast, my sports movie podcast, talking about a
Mm-hmm.
baseball movie. And we struck up a conversation. I kind of reached out to him with a freelance pitch and said, originally it was an idea to do an interview series, like a short mini series on the Pittsburgh Pirates 2009 draft class, which is just as niche as you can get. But essentially the Pirates, they saved money with their first and second, their first and their supplemental first round picks. And then they spent a bunch of lottery tickets on high school pitching. They went over slot for like 6 or 7 guys, and really none of them panned out. And it just take a look at why their struggles, stuff like that. And then that evolved into, let's do a series on high school draft picks and interviewing guys who signed out of high school and what that's like turning into professional at 18. And now it is expanded into trying to get a variety of stories in there. So we've had a bunch of guys who signed out of high school. We've had first round picks. We've had 42nd round picks. We've had college seniors, college juniors, guys who signed out of junior college. The biggest hole is no, we haven't had any Latin American players yet, so that's something
Mhm.
I'm gonna try to get done here soon and get a few guys in who have that experience, feel good enough about their English to do an English speaking interview, because unfortunately I'm not bilingual. And but yeah, so that comes out every other week. And yeah, just talking to guys kind of about their career. Everyone has a different journey, and so that's been fun. I've gotten to do some extended written work for BA, but yeah, and sum it all up, that's kind of I still love baseball, and then I love the minor leagues, prospects, college baseball, and stuff like that. So that series kind of lets me tap into that, because even if guys never made it to the show, a lot of them we're great college players, get to talk about that, the low minors, everything like that. So that's kind of my story.
Oh, for sure. I love that. And I want to ask one quick question. You said your dad immigrated from Cuba.
My grandparents.
Oh, your grandparents.
So
Okay.
yeah. So Castro hopped into power. My grandparents hopped out right about right about that same time.
Okay.
Moved to Lynchburg, Virginia. Basically, gave up everything they had. And my grandpa was fairly successful in Cuba. Gave
Hmm.
up everything they had, moved to a town called Lynchburg, Virginia, which I cannot believe they haven't changed that name yet. But yeah, he taught Spanish at a college. Grandma worked in the bookstore. My dad came around and then started. He liked baseball. My grandparents didn't really. My grandpa likes watching the Cuban players, which has been great for him. The more
Hmm.
there's been more and more since the 60s. But yeah,
Yeah.
my dad gravitated to Tony Oliva, and then hopped on the Twins, which, like, for him, that worked out great. He got to see his team win 2 World Series. He got to go to the one in '91. For me, it has not worked out quite as swimmingly, but I can't complain.
Yeah, I asked that because my dad, he's Puerto Rican, and so I appreciate the Latin heritage that you do have, and especially now that we're still in Latin Heritage Month, and just looking at all the talent all across baseball that that comes from Cuba, from Puerto Rico, from the Dominican Republic, and all the other countries of Latin America. I do appreciate that part of baseball. I think it's really cool to see, especially as like someone who's Hispanic and you have that background as well. Just looking at all the incredible talent all over baseball. I know you mentioned that you want to get one on your podcast. I think that would be incredible. I would definitely take a listen to that. And you have had Yonder Alonso on your podcast. Is he not
I
Cuban?
I had, yeah, Yonder
Mhm.
Alonso is Cuban, so he's
Yeah.
actually one of the few who actually reached out. It was right after he retired. I think he was doing a media circuit. He landed at MLB Network now,
Mhm.
and I had him on, and that was really rewarding. There's a great Players Tribune piece that I referenced a lot in my interview. It was one of those, Players Tribune. They have that thing, players write a letter to their younger self or something like that. And Yonder Alonso's departure from Cuba, his parents woke him and his little sister up in the middle of the night when he was like 11, maybe 9, maybe even younger, and woke him up in the middle of the night, said, grab whatever, we got to go. Drove him to, they drove to an airstrip and boarded a small plane and landed in Miami with literally nothing
Wow.
except the clothes on their backs. And then, now he's, Yonder Alonso made an all-star team.
Hmm.
Was a great player at the University of Miami. I think I'm pretty sure he's a 10-year big leaguer, pretty sure he's got pension. Super nice guy. It was, really enjoyable. But yeah, yeah, Yonder Alonso. So he, not technically not a Latin American signing. He didn't sign at
Right.
16. He
Right.
came here, went to Miami, got to play in some awesome Miami teams. Yasmani Grandal, I think
Hmm.
Jamal Weeks was on those teams. They went to the College World Series, I think, twice. His freshman year and his junior year. So that was a fun one for me, because again, anytime I have someone who's played some big time college baseball, I'm super into it.
Yeah, and I watched him. I mentioned that you're a Twins fan. I grew up in Oakland, California area, so like I grew up a huge A's fan. Like we had season tickets. And my dad, he was born in Puerto Rico, moved to New York, and then moved to the Bay Area. And so yeah, we grew up going to baseball games all the time. I never really played baseball past like little league, although I wish I did. My parents had other dreams for me. They put me in band, which thanks mom.
I mean,
Uh,
that I feel like I always say, though, unless you coach or unless you play pro ball, baseball's kind of done with you when you're done playing. Like band, music, I wish I would have played golf more as a kid because I picked up golf when I got out of college, and I think all the time, man, this would have been a lot easier if I'd started when I was 12. But
That's fair.
so music and what you're doing now, you probably understand sound like a little better than I did when I started all this. So man,
Yeah.
so from the Bay Area, you've got to have a little anxiety over this A's to Vegas situation.
So, all right. I'm glad you mentioned that. So it's funny. So I moved to Wisconsin where I live now. So that's why I cover the Brewers. I talk about them. My podcast is like 80% Brewer talk. And then on YouTube, it's like 50-50. But yeah, when I moved here, Oakland, the Raiders moved to Las Vegas not long after. And I'm a diehard Raiders fan. So I understand your fandom with the Twins. Like I was a fan, started watching them in like '01 when they were in the Super Bowl. And I'm like, dude, I'm watching this team that's going to be sweet. Never went to a playoff game ever again. I'm 32 now. They went to one playoff game since, and Derek Carr was not even in there because he broke his leg Christmas Eve that season. So I
Oh,
definitely
that was
understand.
a brutal injury. I remember the video of that one when he goes down and he's just like, it's broke, like he knew it right away.
Yeah, and it's really like disappointing. And we actually were watching that game. I'm like, just take him out. We're winning, and we don't need this. Whatever. But so yeah, so when they moved to Las Vegas, it didn't really bother me as much because I was already out of California. Um, had I lived in California, that would have hurt so much more because like you see teams leaving, and it's really frustrating for the city that kind of backs them up and really has their back and watches them. And then for Oakland A's, part of me is like, I want Oakland to stay for my family stay because they're all season ticket holders. But for me, I'm like, well, if they move to Las Vegas, maybe they'll sign a player. Maybe they would
Maybe
have
they'll
kept the
pay
Marcus
literally
Simeon.
anyone.
Right. And maybe they would have kept Marcus Simeon, who they could have used a second baseman this season, or they had no bullpen this season. Maybe they could have kept Liam Hendricks and things like that. So that part of the whole like situation, I'm like, well, maybe it's okay if they move because maybe they'll be able to get players. But then part of me is like, like if Oakland loses the Warriors because they went to San Francisco and technically if they're out of Oakland, they lost the Raiders and now they lose Oakland A's, like that city's like politicians, like they really screwed up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it'd be a shame to watch the A's move. It also like they need a new stadium. Like the Coliseum has its weird charm, but it's not a good baseball facility. Players don't like playing there. Players don't like being there.
Mm-hmm.
It's something to where I'm of the mind that like the billionaire owners can figure it out. And cities shouldn't have to pay. And that's the one thing of like the state of California, like a lot of those, although SoFi Stadium just showed up and stuff like that. But it'd be a shame for, like you said, for every sports team to be out of Oakland.
Yeah.
Because the Warriors kind of claim the Bay now, like that whole thing. But like you said,
Mm-hmm.
like they're not in Oakland anymore.
And San Francisco is a whole different. I don't know if you've been out to California, but San Francisco is a whole different vibe than Oakland. Like the Niner fans are different than like Raider fans. Like Raider
Mm-hmm.
fans, what they're like, the stigma or like what we're known for or whatever. Same thing with Oakland. Like we're more a lot of Hispanics, a lot of Latin American, a lot of minorities. Not that San Francisco isn't, but it's just a whole different vibe. So when the Warriors go to San Francisco and say, they wear the Oakland, it doesn't really sit well with me
Mm-hmm.
and other people who live like on this side of the bay. But so in your sports podcast, you do a great job covering breaking down a bunch of sports. As my cat is knocking over a bunch of things here, including Moneyball, which I think was probably one of the favorite ones that I've heard from you. Just having that connection. What has been your favorite sports movie to break down? And then
Ooh.
what is your favorite sports movie, like, or what is your favorite baseball sports movie?
My favorite baseball movie. That's one of the few questions. It's an easy answer. I'm a big Bull Durham fan. I haven't covered it
Okay.
on the podcast. I always say that like whenever I wrap the podcast up, it's gonna be like 4 episodes on Bull Durham, and then I'm walking off into the sunset.
Mhm.
The Moneyball episode you referenced was really fun. I think that is still my longest episode to date. Like that went 2 hours. Had the guys from Tipping Pitches on and
Yeah.
Tipping Pitches podcast, Bobby Wagner, Alex Baisley. Alex is a big A's fan, and they're both extremely intelligent when it comes to the business of baseball. Their podcast is essentially like a baseball labor podcast. They talk about that aspect of the game. So it was great to have them on. um as far as man, there's so many. I've been doing a Ted Lasso rewatch the past for the second half of this year. Basically did a season 1 rewatch, then rolled that into season 2, and that's been really fun. I feel like everyone's loving Ted Lasso. I love Ted
Mhm.
Lasso. As far as movies to, I it's hard to pick one, because every movie you can have some fun with it. Like I haven't released it yet, but last night I recorded a podcast on Over the Top, which is the 1987 Sylvester Stallone arm wrestling. He's an arm wrestling truck driver, and movie it's probably in the Unintentional Comedy Hall of Fame. It's a terrible, terrible movie, but it made for a really, really fun episode just to like, talk about that. So like sometimes the great movies are really fun to talk about, just a general appreciation. But really anything, you can find some fun stuff. The movies that are the only tough ones to talk about are like movies that are just kind of meh. Like they're just there. They're not super good. They're not super bad. They're just like, yeah, solid, like solid sports flick. Like I go there's a rock the rock the game plan when he's like a quarterback. It's like kind of like a kids movie, but it tries to be a football movie too, and it's just
Mhm.
like it's whatever. That episodes like that are like, well, this is a movie. It's got some, Rock as a quarterback. It's kind of funny, uh, stuff like that. But especially ones like Moneyball, um, Little Big League. Loved Little Big League. That was a fun one to break down. But there's so many. Baseball has made for so many good sports
Mhm.
movies. Like it lends itself really well to the screen. 61 did that recently. That was a really good one. Yeah, baseball just it lends itself to cinema very, very well.
I have a baseball movie for you that I recently watched with my kid. I know you have a kid. I have well, I have three, but my older son, he's almost 5, and I was watching baseball. I want to say maybe a month ago, and he came up to me and said what every dad wants to hear: "Dad, can I watch baseball with you?" And I'm like, "Dude, yeah, let's do it." So we were watching baseball, and then I just took him to his first baseball game. We went to a Brewers game
Oh, that's the
this
best.
past weekend. Yeah, it was amazing. He had a great time. I will say this is funny because we got to the stadium and then he goes, "Dad, I thought I was gonna play." And I said, "No, no, 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 no." So I explained like we're gonna watch them play. And then of course he had all the snacks he wanted. Like I just made it the best experience for him
Yeah,
because
when you take him to the game, we got a minor league park here. You gotta give them the full experience. They gotta have the sweets,
yeah,
the salty snacks. You gotta prop them up for a few innings.
exactly. And then they have like Matt Middle Park and Fan Field has a really cool like family section with like a little playground and all that. So we went there. He had a really good time. But we watched recently. I was trying to find a baseball movie to watch with him. And have you seen Everyone's Hero? It came out a while ago.
I have not. I'm familiar, but I haven't seen it. I know it's a
Okay,
kids. I haven't covered many of the kids. I think The Sandlot is one of the few baseball kids movies I've covered. I guess Little Big League is a kids movie, but that movie is
yeah,
perfect. That movie's for adults too.
okay. I was gonna say Everyone's Hero is a movie you should probably at one point cover. It's a really like it's definitely like a kid movie, but I just thought it was funny that I was looking for, and it came out a while ago. I never even heard of it until like a couple months ago. But this kid is just trying to get his bat to Babe Ruth. I guess he goes on this little journey. And the ball talks and the baseball bat talks, and it's a weird, quirky movie. But my son loved it, and that's to me, I guess that's all that matters.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, and I always say like every movie's on the list. Like I don't want to wrap up the podcast until I cover every sports movie, which is
I do it.
little unrealistic. But yeah, I mean, there's and I don't. Were you familiar with the Matt Christopher books when you were growing up? Like he wrote. kind of like short kids novels, like junior novels on sports. Like they were something that I was a huge fan of. There was one called The Kid Who Only Hit Homers, or The Boy Who Only Hit Homers, something like that.
Yes, yes,
And
yes. Those, I think those are the
and
only books I ever got from like the
yeah,
school
and
library.
they just made a Kid Who Only Hit Homers movie on Amazon Prime. I haven't gotten to check it out yet, but I'm looking forward to that. So that's probably in that same vein, probably something you're gonna be able to share with your son too, because it's definitely marketed towards like young children.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I love that. And I can't wait for him to get older so I can start showing him like the classics and then, Moneyball, and let him know this is the pain that your dad felt, watching those Moneyball teams live. But one thing we'll touch on real quick. Have you, I know you're a Twins fan, and like, not to make it worse, but this playoff season is coming. Just looking at the American League and the National League, I know that the Twins did play the Brewers in, I guess, two series, opening series, and then a little bit further on. What are your thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on briefly the Brewers and maybe like the postseason like picture in general?
I mean, in the sense, I mean, I guess the biggest Brewers news now is the Devin Williams being out, and the bullpen, aside from Hader, is a little thin, so it's probably not what you want. I mean, the Brewers, the thing that I think bodes well for them, and this was true right in that first series of the year in Milwaukee. I think Freddie Peralta started the opener, if I remember correctly, and he was pretty good. And then Corbin Burns has been amazing, and you've got Woodruff. So I mean, you've got three horses that I think that always gives you a chance. It just, with baseball now, it's like, 5, 6, and then get it to the bullpen. If the Brewers are going to make a run, it's going to have to be like 7, 8 and get it to Hader.
Mm-hmm.
And, that can that work? Sure. But you're going to have to ride those guys. I think that's where the strength of the team is. Willie Adames obviously has worked out famously
Mm-hmm.
for coming to the Brewers. They've got him and Wong and Urias, and maybe the ghost of Christian Yelich can play well in the play. I mean, that's the thing. It's such a small sample size in October. It's like, we saw like Randy Rosarina become the best player in baseball last
Mm-hmm.
year, and he's like quality. He's a good player,
Right.
but he's probably not that guy. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you've got Christian Yelich who has that in his tool bag. He's been that guy before. Like, could that guy get super hot for 2, 3 weeks? Like, it's not unreasonable. The thing, like, if you're in and you win your division, you got as good a chance as anybody. So that, I mean, you got as good a correction, you got as good a chance of anybody except the Dodgers, because
Yeah.
the Dodgers, just the depth that team has is dumb. So I would say they got as good a chance as Atlanta. They probably got a better rotation than Atlanta. So that's something there. You got Cardinals devil magic coming back out to play. You got the Giants, who I don't think anyone thought the
Nope.
Giants were like,
Nope.
it just makes no sense. And it's like, does that team hold up? So I mean, you get in, that's the important thing. I mean, it can be anyone. I think it's going to be the Dodgers again. But I it wouldn't shock. I mean, it wouldn't shock me to see, because we see it every year. Some team gets the
Mm-hmm.
team you don't think it's going to be gets hot, makes a run in the championship series, or even makes it to the World Series, something like that. So it's not like the Brewers didn't luck their way into this. I feel like I'd be very surprised if like the Giants made it to the World Series. I wouldn't be surprised if the Brewers made it to the World Series.
But wouldn't you say every year the Giants made it to the World Series, you would have been surprised? Kind of.
Well, yeah, but I mean that team. Well, you think it like what's at the front, like what's at the front of the rotation of that team? Like that's
That's true.
Bumgarner, that's Lincecum when he's still Lincecum. At least that first run.
Matt Cain.
You've got Matt Cain. You've got hero performances in that rotation. You've got guys who get hot. Pablo Sandoval made a lot of money
Mm,
just hitting in the playoffs, like a ton of money hitting in the playoffs, and
yeah.
like I mean, the Brewers are not dissimilar from those Giants
Mm-hmm.
teams, in that they have these guys. You could see Corbin Burns throw up 30, 30 scoreless innings in the postseason or something crazy, something like
Yeah.
that. Like that's not out of the question. Someone gets really hot and drives, Christian Yelich hits 450 in the ALDS and ALCS or something, or Adames really breaks out because I think he's
Mm-hmm.
also playing for a deal too. Like he's playing for World Series, playing for a deal. That's, you never really know. I mean, maybe Dan Vogelbach runs into like 6 pitches, because I mean, in the postseason,
Yeah.
anything like baseball is such a game of averages over 162. And then in the postseason, it's such a short sample size. It's like we wouldn't, you have to win. You have to win 7 games to get to the World Series if you win your division. Like we wouldn't take if a guy had a hot 7 games. You're not like, oh, this guy's going to be like a Hall of Famer. But in baseball postseason, that's all it takes. It's such a small sample size compared to what the season is versus like the NFL. It's a much different kind of percentage. Like you have a much different idea, but it's like in baseball, it's like someone gets hot. If you have a guy who hits 4 home runs in 3 days, like you've got a really good shot to win your series.
Yeah, I think of Travis Ichikawa on the
Yeah,
Giants,
exactly.
the
Exactly.
random
That dude
infielder who
carried
hit
the
that.
Giants to a title. Helped carry the Giants to a title, and quality big league player. Probably has. I think he made like half pension or something, which is solid. I think
Yeah.
he got like
And
6 years.
yeah, Joe Panic, like just a bunch of random, like to your point. There's you never know who's gonna be, and I think that's one of my most favorite parts of the postseason. You never know who's gonna be that big, the hero. Like Johnny Gomes for the Red Sox, he had a huge home run. And this, I think it was ALCS. He had a huge home run, and you always see that every season. I think it's going to be a really exciting postseason. The AL wild card right now, the Mariners, like if they can get in that team, like I'm not a Mariners fan, but if for that city, for a fan base that hasn't seen postseason baseball and like we speak about like 20 years or
Those fans
whatever.
deserve it so much.
Yeah. I
So
hope
much.
they get in, and I hope the Blue Jays get in. I would love to see Blue Jays, Mariners. No offense, Red Sox fans. No offense, Yankees. But I think that series would be so much more exciting.
Mm-hmm.
But let's wrap this up on that. Let us know where we can find your podcast, where we can find you on social. And thanks so much again for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Big
Mhm.
Screen Sports comes out every Monday, usually an episode on a movie or something similar to that. Our Ted Lasso rewatch drops every Thursday. That's kind of wrapping up. We got the penultimate episode drops this Thursday, and then our finale recap, which should be a banger. Should have a few guests on for that. Drops the week after. From Phenom to the Farm drops every other Tuesday. So depending on when you're listening to this, I guess on Tuesday, October 5th, former Brewers farmhand turned now he's an MLB agent, George Iskandarian. He joins, the good thing about both Big Screen Sports and From Phenom to the Farm, both feeds are pretty evergreen. If you got a favorite sports movie, go dig through the archives, might be in there. It's pretty timely. And then the interviews of the players don't really age their career. It's most guys who retired, not really anything after that retirement. So yeah, go check them out there. That's where, and then you can follow me on Twitter at Kyle Bandujo. It's Bandujo.
Perfect. Well, hey, Kyle, again, thanks so much for coming on. I do appreciate that. Definitely check out his podcast. Like I said, you do a great job with both of the podcasts that you do. And you have a great rest of your day. Enjoy your weekend.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. You too.
All right. Bye now.